In this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and cover InDesign CC 2020 Classroom in a Book, Chapter 4, which is all about working with objects. This is a tricky one. It does have a lot of moving pieces, a lot of elements that we have to work on. It will take a little while, but I promise you, you will get quite a bit out of it in terms of how to use InDesign and how to create your own publications. So let's go ahead and get started. And let's go ahead and look at InDesign. So one of the first things we're going to do is make sure we're in the same workspace. So let's go to Window, come down to Workspace, and go ahead and push Advanced. Make sure we're all in the same one. Alright, now that we're in that one, let's go ahead and take a peek at a few different things. Let's go ahead to begin with, let's look at this one called Layers Intro. So I've got my Layers Intro. If it says please update links, go ahead and say yes, update the links as you open those. Let's go ahead and do a view. Let's go to display performance and do high quality so we can get those nice crisp things going on. So in this lesson, we're going to go ahead and play with quite a few different elements of how to make an actual project in InDesign. So one of the first things we want to look at is layers. So let's go to Window and come down here to Layers and make sure you open that Layers panel. So if you look at the Layers panel, you can see we've got quite a few different layers. We've got phone, type, numbers, and background. You can use those eyeballs to figure out what is on each layer. Now you're wondering, why would we want to put things on layers? Putting things on layers makes it much easier for you to be an organized designer, especially if you have a case where we have a lot of different moving pieces and we've got to be able to isolate some of those. So let's go ahead and take a peek at, let's look at the type one. If I click on the type one, I can click here on the little tiny box, a little hollow box. It's going to give me kind of that magenta color. And so that's going to tell me that is the target layer, that whatever I type, whatever I work on right now is going to end up on that type layer. So as you're working on your publications, you want to get in the habit of working with layers because it's going to make your designs much neater and easier to deal with. So let's go ahead and take a peek at a few of the things we can do. What happens if we take and move, let's contract that and move that type layer down underneath background? What happens? So we can see that the type has disappeared underneath the bag because it is now the layer with the images is on top of those different layers. So you can kind of move those back and forth. If you take that phone photo, put it behind the numbers, it doesn't do anything. If we take the phone and put it behind the background, you're going to see that now it is tucked behind the background. So it's just kind of an idea of getting to use all the different layers. It's an idea that we use a lot in Photoshop, and it's a little bit new to some people, so want to get to play with that a little bit. So let's go ahead, we're not going to save this, just want you to get in and play with the different layers a little bit. So let's go ahead and close that. No, we don't want to save it. Alright, so what we are going to do today is work on this newsletter. There's a lot of moving pieces in this one. Let's go ahead and do a file, save as, do first initial, last name, underscore, InDesign, Classroom in a Book, Chapter 4. We make sure we're putting it in our Chapter 4 lesson folder and say save. Why is it not saving? That's fun. Alright, let's try file, save as again. First initial, last name, underscore, InDesign, Classroom in a Book, Chapter 4. Alright, no idea why I didn't like that before. But we're going to find a few of those as we go along today. It's just going to be a longer process. Alright, let's go ahead and take a peek at our layers we have in this one. If you look at this one, we have one called Layers Graphics and one called Layers Text. So we can tell that the pen indicates which layer we're on right now. So anytime I'm on the pen, it'll say this is the one we're going to work on. We can tell the pen is anything on this red layer. So if anything I turn off, anything that's on that graphics layer will turn off according to what is on those individual layers. So it's kind of a matter of learning those different elements. Alright, so let's go ahead and click on the triangle next to text. And we actually want to go ahead and move some of those layers around. So just as we moved the photo of the bag of groceries before, we can move things around in here. So we want to go ahead and use the zoom tool. And we want to zoom in on these bleeding hearts, the little flowers. So I'm going to do a Control plus and zoom in. And I can go ahead and see that bleeding heart right now, I can tell, is the active layer. It's got that little blue mark right by it. And we want to go ahead and drag that up to the graphics layer. So now the outline went from being light blue to bright red, and our bleeding heart is now here on the graphics layer. So you just want to know that you can move those layers around after the fact. If you do decide to, you mess up, you put something on the wrong layer, it's just fine to move those elements around. Alright, so what happens if we do Object, Arrange, and Send to Back? We can see that not much happens because we're still on that graphics layer. So it's okay if you move this now onto the text layer, it would hide because that graphics layer is on top. So you just want to get to see, if you did something, you can't find it, just check see which layer you're on. It'll make it a little bit easier. So now we're going to go ahead and do a View, Fit, Spread, and Window. And we're going to go ahead and create and reorder some layers. So let's go ahead and click on the, let's go ahead and just make those smaller. You can actually lock these layers, so you can make it so that you can make sure you don't accidentally change things once you've got them set where you want them to be. So we're going to go ahead and create a new layer. So we're going to go here to the New Layer button at the bottom, Create New Layer. And we're going to create this new layer. We're going to double click it and call it Background. And anything that we put on this background layer will be the color of green. We'll have a green outline around it. Alright, so what are we going to go ahead and put on that background layer? With the selection tool, we're going to go ahead and grab the light green. Oh, we're just going to say OK. Let's grab that light green that's on this background right here. And we can see that that's on that text layer. Now what I can do is take that blue and just drag it straight up to the background. And now that rectangle is above, it's in that background layer. So I'm going to take that background layer and move it back down to the bottom so we get our layer order back in order. So that will take care of those ones. Let's go ahead and go to the next pages. So we can use the bottom arrows down here, use the next one. And I'm going to go ahead and do a selection and just do a small box above these two. It's going to pick up both of those colors for me without having to go through and grab a whole bunch of extra stuff. I'm going to go ahead and grab that layer now and move it down into background. Grab the blue box. So now I can see I've got these rectangles. Okay, I missed this one, so let's go ahead and grab this one. Let's see if we've got both of them. They're both, this one is green. This one is green, so we've got them all where we want them. So this should be alright, and it's going to change depending on what page you're on. So if I go up here, I'll get a different one. So your layers do change depending on what page you're on. Alright, let's go ahead and lock that background layer so we don't accidentally move any of those items. And let's do a Control S and go ahead and click outside on your pasteboard so we make sure we don't have anything selected. So the next thing we're going to do is play with some text frames. We're going to go ahead and put an article in here. So let's go ahead, let's make sure our target layer is text. So make sure we've got that text selected. We know we've got the little pen there. And let's grab our type tool. And with our type tool, we're going to go ahead and draw a type frame. We want to go from here down to about there. So we want to make sure we cover those last three columns. Oh, no we don't. Undo. We're doing a different one. We're going to do it right over here. We're going to do this one down to here, so it's just one column wide. Nope, they want 2 columns. I am messing this up all over the place. Alright, so I've got 2 columns, and we want to, in the new frame, type featured. And then we want blossoms. Then we want to do a shift return instead of just an enter, because we want to make sure that they all stay within the same paragraph, and that forced line break will do that. Alright, so let's go ahead and apply a paragraph style to that. Let's go ahead and go to our paragraph styles, and we want to go ahead and choose right flush title. If you can't see them all, you can go ahead and change the size of that panel, or you can scroll down. So I've got right flush title. So this one's already gone through and created a whole bunch of styles for you and made it a lot easier for you to do those things. And we'll work a lot more with styles in some future chapters, but you do want to use styles as much as possible. All right, let's go ahead and hit escape. We'll switch to our selection tool, and let's double click the center to fit that frame. So if you double click it, it'll automatically do the fitting. So it'll make it so you don't have a bunch of boxes sitting on top of each other, because that can make things really hard to control. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and collapse my paragraph styles for now. Let's do a view, fit spread in window, so I can see both my pages a little bit better. And we want to go ahead and grab this box that says Botanical Gardens Worldwide. Now if you notice right here, we've got this red plus sign, which shows that we have some overset text which we need to fix. So we're going to do a few things in order to fix that. First thing we're going to do is drag the center handle of this box straight down. So now that we have no overset text, but it's kind of a boring box, we want to do a few other things with it. We're going to play with it and make it a little bit nicer. So let's do a Control S and save what we have so far, and do an edit, deselect all, so we don't have anything selected, and go into the next thing. So the next thing we're going to do is reshape this Botanicals Worldwide. Let me go ahead and pull up the end ones so you can kind of see what we're doing as we go. So I'm going to go ahead and update my modified links. So see what we're doing right now is we're creating this kind of curve shape to the text box. So we just made featured blossoms. Now we're going to work on this curve. All right, so we're going to go ahead and want to grab our tools panel. We want to grab our direct selection, which is the one below it, below selection. And we want to click within this text frame we just resized. So now we're going to get these 4 small, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a bunch so you can see. We're going to get these 4 small squares, kind of grabbers on the side. All right, so what we want to do is grab this bottom right. It's going to turn into a hollow point. Oh, undo. Okay, my pointer should turn black. Let's zoom in even more. Nope. Okay, I'm going to grab my direct selection. I'm going to click inside this box. I'm going to get my frame. There we go. Now, since I've got the direct selection, I can grab just one corner of that. All right, so now I've got some overset text, and I have changed it to be more of a, well, we can go in a little bit too. Let's go in here. So you can see I've changed the size of that text box. It's a little bit ugly, not quite what we want it to do yet. So now what we're going to do is convert it so we can change this into a kind of a rounded corner. So we're going to go under our pen tool. It's about halfway down, and we want this convert direction point tool. So it's going to kind of looks like a little carrot. And we're going to go ahead and press on the point we just moved, and we're going to hold it, and it's going to turn this into a rounded corner. Let's go ahead and grab and turn. See how it's turning, giving us those handles to turn this into kind of a rounded corner. So let's go ahead and move it round. Alright, so we're happy-ish with that. We've got still a little bit of overset text, so we can play with that a little bit more. Let's go ahead and click back to our selection tool. And let's go ahead and pull down that box just a little bit more and see if we can make it fit just a little bit better. Alright, so now we have turned that rectangle into nice curved, so it's kind of a nice shape. Makes it your design a little bit more fun. Let's go ahead and do a Control S and save what we've got so far. And you could always go back in with your direct selection tool and play with the shape of that some more. Let's go ahead and deselect all by clicking on our pasteboard. And let's create some multi-column frames. So right now we're going to work on this section right here, this rose, the calla lily, the hydrangea. So let's go ahead to our pages and switch over to page 4. And we've got all this text in here right now. Let's go ahead and grab our selection tool, grab this box that says rose. With there, let's go to Object, come down here to Text Frame Options. Go ahead and make sure your preview is turned on so you can see what it's doing as you're doing it. We want to go ahead and change our columns up to 3. I want something to work. Oh, I don't want 7. Alright, 3 columns, and I want to make sure that my gutter is 0.125, so that's what it is right now. And let's go ahead and say OK. I want to go to Type. I want to come down to Show Hidden Characters. So Show Hidden Characters is going to make it so you can see all of those paragraph markers and things like that. Because we want to do that because we need to be able to see the next few items. So we want to actually insert some breaks so that we have a nicer looking columns here. So let's go ahead with our type tool, come in right before foxglove, and we want to tell it to break the column right there. So we're going to go to type. We want to go to insert break character, and we want column break. So that's going to break that one. Let's go ahead and come down here to crocus, type, insert break character, and column break. So you want to make sure you're letting the software do the work for you. You don't want to go ahead and try and put in a bunch of returns or enters, and you don't want to draw 5 jillion boxes. And you know we've got the column break because it's right here. It's got the little tiny, I'll see if I can show you, down blue arrow. So now we've gone ahead and broken those. You can hide those characters again. I usually like to see them because sometimes it makes it a little bit easier. Let's go ahead and go to our layers panel. And I'm going to lock the graphics. No, graphics was supposed to be locked. It's unlocked now. Let's go ahead and click on that graphics layer because that's where we're going to work next. So let's go ahead and do a view, fit spread in window. And the next thing we're going to work with is this urban oasis garden. So you can kind of see in our final, this is what we're looking for. So we want to be able to create this look and feel with one text box and not have to have a whole bunch of different text boxes put together because you want fewer objects. So in order to do that, let's go ahead, grab our selection tool and grab that urban oasis. It's got a red outline. We know we're on the graphics right there. And let's go to Object. Let's come down here to Text Frame Options. Text Frame Options is your best friend. Use it a lot. Alright, we're going to go ahead and want to make sure Preview is turned on in case it's not. And we want to make sure our All Settings is disabled because we want to make them different from each other. Because we want to push the left one up to 2 inches. And we want to turn the right into 0.625. And now you hit tab to move on to the next one. So let me cancel. Reduce those layers so you can kind of see what's going on. So right now it doesn't seem like you did anything at all. I'm going to go back into my object, my text frame options. Alright, so now what do we want to do? We want to go ahead and make sure that Urban Oasis ends up aligned in the middle. So align center, which is totally what we want. Oh, I lost my thing from earlier too, and point. Oh, undo. I don't want top. Undo. I want this to be 0. I want left to be 2. And I want right to be 0.0625. 0.625. And I hosed it a little bit, so we'll just fix it and drag it back over. Alright, so now we are cruising right along. The next thing we're going to do is it's align center. So with the type tool, we're going to come here. We want to come here to spring 2020, right before spring 2020. We want to push spring 2020 over to the edge without having to put a bunch of spaces in. So we're going to go to type. We want insert special character. We want to go to other. And we want right tab indent. So it's automatically going to push that right tab over to the side for us. So let the software do the work for you. I'm going to go ahead and click out to my pasteboard. I'm going to do Control S and save. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is play with the graphics. We want to go ahead and add this element right here, this logo element. So let's go into our window and our layers. Let's go ahead and lock the text layer. We're not messing with the text layer right now. And we want to make sure we're working on the graphics layer. Alright, so we've got that. Let's go ahead and draw a rectangle frame. So I've got my rectangle frame tool. And we want to go ahead and add the place to put the logo. So we're going to click right here on this first and come down into the pink just a little bit until we meet the margin line. Alright, now I want to go ahead and switch to my selection tool. My graphics frame is still selected. I want to go to File and come down here to Place. With Place, I want to make sure I go find my folder that everything's in. So I've got mine in, got a lot of folders. InDesign, Chapter 4. It's going to be in Links, and I want this Urban Oasis logo. It is a Illustrator file. You can place native files into the different programs now. You used to have to change it. So let's do our object. Come down here to let's go to View, Display Performance, and change it to high quality because it's kind of fuzzy. Make sure it looks nice. Now we want to go ahead and resize it. So depending on the size of your frame, it may or may not have come in the right size. So it might have come in a little too small, too big. So we can actually use the tools to play with that. So you can grab your tool, make sure that your frame is big enough to see the entire logo. When we're happy with it, click on your pasteboard to deselect, Control S to save. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and come over here to our pages. Let's go ahead to go to page 4, and we're going to go ahead and put a logo right down here. So that one, this one up here that we placed had a text frame, or had an object frame. What happens if you don't have an object frame? So we need to go ahead and be able to put the logo in here. So let's go ahead and do File and Place. And we're going to grab that logo again, say Open. So now I have my loaded cursor, and what I'm going to do is just click right in here next to my return address and place it in there. So when I have it placed in there, you're going to see that um, it's scaled to fit that frame. So maybe we don't want it that size. We can always change the size it is later and move it around. For right now, we're going to go ahead and leave it the size that it is. And we will go ahead and play with a few other things. Alright, so let's go ahead and deselect and do a Control S to save. Alright, we're going to go ahead and place a bunch of images now for our featured blossom section. So we could do this by drawing 6, 10, 12 different boxes, which we don't want to have to do. So we're going to actually place multiple images at one time. This will take a few tries. So just watch once and then go ahead and do it. So File and Place. I want to go ahead and grab these 6 images. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to click on rows. I'm going to hit Shift. I'm going to hit 6 for Calla Lily. So I highlight all 6 and say Open. I'm now going to get a loaded cursor with 6 elements. You can see it's got that little number 6 next to it. Alright, so I'm going to drag a box down and over. Do not let go of the mouse button. I'm going to hit the right arrow and hit it twice to give me 2 columns. I'm going to hit the up arrow to give me another row. So now I have 6 spots for my photos to go into. I'm going to go ahead and let go of my mouse, and it's going to load all 6 of those according to the size of the boxes that we have right there. So it's a much easier way to create those images in a very uniform way without having to do a lot of extra work. Alright, so what are we going to play with next? Let's go ahead and deselect and do Control S and save. Let's go ahead and play with our, each has its own bounding box or content grabber. So let's go ahead and play with this rows. So with the rows, if you take the selection tool, you can actually grab, you can see the image is a little bit bigger than what we have there. The content grabber, the donut in the middle, will allow you to move that image within the frame if you want to make it look a little bit different. Where'd my content grabber go? Alright, so there's my content grabber. I can move that image within the frame. So I can actually, but I want to make sure I'm over to the edge. So maybe I want to make sure I get more of that other rows in there. So you can move what you have within the frame. Let's take a peek at our foxglove over here. So we want to grab that content grabber, and we want to do Shift and grab this corner and see how we can proportionally zoom in. Use that grabber, bring this over a little bit so we can actually get a little bit nicer shot of those flowers in there. So we like that one. Let's go ahead and deselect. And let's play with our crocuses one more time. So let's go ahead and do a Shift, grab our grabber, and zoom in on those crocuses a little bit more. Get a nice shot of those. Alright, so now what else we can do? Let's go to our hydrangea down here, the purple one. Let's go to Object. Let's come down here to Fitting, and we want Fill Frame Proportionally. And it's actually going to change, it's going to increase the scale so that it looks a little bit better. So let's go ahead and try that with this as well. You can also go into Window, I'm not saying it. So let's go ahead and just go Object, Fitting. Oh, make sure we have something chosen. Oh, I moved it. Undoozy. Let's go ahead and look at Object, Fit, Fill Frame Proportionally. And we can do the same with our Calla Lily. We can do right click, Fitting, Fill Frame Proportionally. Alright, so now we have changed the size of those. Do Control S and play with all of those. Depending on which window you have open, which set, sometimes you'll get some of those fitting options over here. So let's go ahead and adjust the space between some of these. So maybe you want to get more of these stargazer lilies in than you had before. Let's go ahead and grab that gap tool. It's the third one down. And you can see it'll grab the gap between these two. And it will allow you to change the gap between different images. I'm going to do Control Z. I'm going to hit Shift and do it, and it'll only move the top one. So it allows you to resize some of your images without doing the other ones. So let's go ahead and grab that and hold Shift. See if we can get a few more of those stargazer lilies in. I'm going to go ahead and grab my selection tool, do a right click. Let's do fitting, fit frame proportionally. So you can see you've got a lot of different options. Now I can't see my hydrangea as well, so I'm going to go ahead and move it around. So instead of having to create a whole bunch of different size boxes, you have the ability to maintain those widths that you created with your columns and create something that's slightly more visually interesting. Alright, so the next thing we want to do is add some metadata we want to add some captions to these. So let's grab our selection tool and select a box around that covers these 6 items. So it'll make your life a little bit easier. Let's go to the links panel, and you can see that we've got all 6 of those selected. Let's go to our hamburger menu right here. Let's come down here to captions, and we want to go ahead and do caption setup. And our text before, we want to go ahead and delete. We don't want any text before. For our description, or for our metadata, we want to do description. So someone's already gone in and done cleaned up all of what's in there. So we want it to be description. Here it is. And for text after, we want to write flower. Alright, don't add the period. Below, we want to make sure that we put it below the image. To offset, we want to put 0.02. And for the style, we've already created a style called photo credit. And now we're happy with it, so let's say OK. Now nothing happened. That's okay. We have to now generate. So let's go ahead and go back into our hamburger menu. Our captions, we want to generate a static caption. And it's going to go ahead and put those names of those captions, the flowers below. So now it's running into my other story just a little bit. So I'm going to grab my story. Oh, I can't grab it because my text is locked. So that's my problem there. I'm going to go ahead, unlock it, and slide those down just a little tiny bit. Alright, I'm going to break this tutorial so that we can pick it up here again in a minute.